Hi everyone, I'm Laureate Professor Marilyn Flair from Monash University. If you're interested in knowing about how to bring STEM concepts into play, then stay watching. In our conceptual play world, we begin with a children's book or some kind of storytelling. Selecting the story is actually very important, and we have to ask ourselves some key questions. Is it engaging? Is it full of drama? And is it alive with the potential to go on exciting journeys day after day, week after week? If you said yes to any of those questions, then you've chosen the right book or the right story for role play. The next decision to be made about bringing STEM concepts into play is, what are the STEM possibilities in the book? If we take, for example, a rather challenging concept in physics, such as light, how might we choose the relevant concept in relation to the right book? It's easier than you think. For example, there are two kinds of books. There are books that are directly related to the concept. We can see the concept very easily in the book. And an example of that is My Shadow by Robert Louis Stevenson, or Alison Lester's Who's That Knocking? They're examples where shadows are explicitly discussed, and we might think that's a great way to go. What's the key idea that might be explored in those books? Well, of course, a shadow is about blocking light. And also, light is something that children are immersed in all the time, so they don't necessarily think about it because it's always there. They think more about the absence of light, darkness and scariness. But light travels in a straight line, so we know we can do all sorts of beautiful things to block the light, to refract the light, to create a rainbow, to reflect the light by using mirrors. There's so many wonderful things that can happen. But what does that tell us about how to engage the children in those concepts in the story? There's another kind of book, and I have an example here. One of my favourites, The Spooky Old Tree. An old one, of course, and I'm sure you all have a favourite book as well. Doesn't immediately present itself as a book about the concept of light. But we know in this story that there is a page that brings out all of this. So about the three bears, one with a light, one with a stick, and one with a rope. And of course, this is an adventure at night time, going through a spooky old tree. And this creates the drama, the story that inspires the children to take them to the concepts that you're wanting to work with, to intentionally teach. Okay, that's the children in those concepts in the story. There's another kind of book, and I have an example here. One of my favourites, The Spooky Old Tree. An old one, of course, and I'm sure you all have a favourite book as well. Doesn't immediately present itself as a book about the concept of light. But we know in this story that there is a page that brings out all of this. So about the three bears, one with a light, one with a stick, and one with a rope. And of course, this is an adventure at night time, going through a spooky old tree. And this creates the drama, the story that inspires the children to take them to the concepts that you're wanting to work with, to intentionally teach. What's really beautiful about a book like this is that not only it sets up the drama and brings children to the concept of light, but it also gives the possibility for creating an imaginary conceptual play world, setting up the space for a spooky old tree outside, leaving a rope, a light or a torch, and a stick. After the children are very familiar with the story, gives this wonderful possibility to take forward this whole play world outside, in role, being in character, where you have to meet, where you meet problems. And one of the problems might be, well, one time when we go outside to enter the conceptual play world, to be the bears, or we might be different characters that day. We might actually be kangaroos, emus, and we're exploring this spooky old tree. But there isn't a light. There's just a bunch of wires, alligator clips and batteries. This has set up a problem. We haven't got a light. We have to make our own torch. So this is an example of how the story doesn't necessarily make concepts obvious, but it brings in the drama to lead the children to the concepts, and it's then the adventures that we create that actually lead us to exploring these concepts, so that we can start to look at and bring into the need to research, well, how do you make a torch? And this is where materials can be really useful. And I'm going to share some examples with you of things that I've made and used with children. For example, this is something that I made. As you can see, it's been very well loved and used by children and by adults. And it actually has non-fiction content in it about actually this kind of science concepts that you can easily find on YouTube to get the kind of information you need. It sets up an examples of what to explore in relation to the concept. And here is of course the circuit, so it's kind of like going into the skeleton or doing an X-ray of the torch. But better than that, it's also very interactive. It's something you can easily make. So here we have a bit of blue tack, a bit of cardboard, and we actually can see all the different components of the torch. And this is something children could even make their own kind of torch models in this way, as well, of course, making real ones, because it's much more fun to actually see the bulb light. But then, as you can see in this example, it goes down to the kind of diagrams. And, of course, children become very curious as to what's actually going on. So we can often find information that we need to explain. It, of course, depends on the group of children. So what we found in our research is that children are also interested in the batteries. And here is an example of the zinc casing and the carbon rod. Because children often know from home that their batteries go flat. And sometimes they think, do they go flat like a piece of paper? A conceptual play world can bring together for the children an opportunity to talk about what they know as they're trying to solve the problem of actually making their own torch. If you're also interested to look at other examples of resources, we've made fantastic materials that are directly related to children. So this resource, which looks at all the dimensions of light, and one of them, of course, is refracting light, something very interesting and something that's really a great curiosity for children because they see rainbows. So light is a beautiful concept to explore with children. So when we think about the kinds of things we've talked about today, we've discussed how it's so important to bring the children to the concepts through the drama of the story. The book doesn't have to be explicitly about the STEM concept that we're wanting to intentionally teach. We also want to create, as part of the drama, lots of adventures. And when we have adventures, then it's really important to have the opportunity for children to solve the problems that arise by researching about the STEM concepts. And that's when these kinds of books become really useful, to explore some of the science concepts or technological concepts or engineering principles. Or you can find the resources and the information you need by going onto YouTube's and looking at those. And children can do this. This is a site designed for children. So we can draw on many materials to support us in the exploration of light and researching, so we can work out how to enrich the play further by learning more of the concepts and taking that into the play thereafter. Imaginary play helps children to think about the abstract concepts like light, making it something to be curious about, to explore and to think about. The children research and solve problems so that the play can continue. Let's get that torch working. Problem solving, why it's not working. We've got too many wires. Is the wires disconnected? Is the battery flat? Lots of curiosities that can come from the adventures of the spooky old tree. And that's how you bring concepts into children's play.